Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. While fruits and vegetables are healthy to eat, the produce supply chain is a global driver of carbon emissions. Pablo Borquez, Schwarzbeck, founder at ProducePay, is working to change that. He's here to share ways the agricultural industry is adopting to mitigate climate change. Pablo, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Why is the produce industry such a major contributor to climate change?
Well, it's a bit of compounding factors, but let's start with the fact that 30% of greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture, but it's still a necessary activity since we have to eat, right? But there's a lot of inefficiency that can help us reduce that problem. For example, a big part of fruits and vegetables that get produced actually never get eaten, given the perishable aspect of the commodity. To give you an example, in the United States, the amount of produce that doesn't get consumed post-production is 52%. Which adds a huge amount to that footprint. That's not even the worst of it. If you consider the fact that it's most of the produce that actually doesn't get produced, and then you add to the fact that a lot of that CO2 gets produced from production, transportation, and handling. Now the fact you have to dump a lot of this product actually produces methane and worse gas house emissions. So the gist of it is that it can be improved, and that's a lot of what we're trying to do.
And how is ProducePay addressing this problem?
Yeah, so the way we're going about it is first, we're trying to create efficiency in the supply chain, right? There are some base levels that are necessary, but the most part of it is actually what we call unnecessary gas house emissions. So what we're doing is we're actually trying to build trust and transparency. A lot of the reason why so much waste occurs is because most produce that we consume is actually imported from other countries. And these patterns continue and evolve as globalization occurs. So to give you an example, the average piece of produce the American consumes travels 1,600 miles, is handled by 4 to 8 different people before it actually gets to your retail store. So our goal is to reduce that, to ultimately bring down that number to at least half, and ultimately create more direct lines of supply. And our own baseline that we ProducePay are holding ourselves to is to actually have half of the wastage and half of the overall, call it transportation time, come down to ultimately eliminate the number by half. That's kind of our first milestone that we've set for ourselves.
So how is ProducePay bringing efficiency to the supply chain and making it more sustainable?
So we're trying to do this in a twofold manner. The first is by ultimately creating technology. A huge reason why this, what we call unnecessary or non-value additive middleman, is because there's a lack of trust in the industry, because you're ultimately transitioning an old school industry to a new one post 21st century with digitization. Our goal is to ultimately become or to showcase a better way of working directly purely through technology and innovation. That is the ability for you to find a counterparty, find them rated, and properly do so by then. The other is through something that we just launched called Sustainably Sourced, which is the produce industry's first formal decarbonization initiative in this space.
And let's learn more about this carbon offset program. Tell us more about that.
So ultimately, what we did is we first had to realize if it was actually feasible to do decarbonization in the produce space. One of the biggest challenges that exists today is that most of decarbonization in agriculture happens through forestation, so planting trees, or through very large commodity crops like wheat or soy. The thing about produce is that it comes in all shapes and sizes, literally. So different plants have different phenologies and different means to ultimately sequester carbon from the environment. So the first thing we had to do was we had to partner with a company called Alcott, which is one of the partners that we interviewed for this process. And we had to find out if it was actually feasible for us to figure out how to do things at a per commodity scale. And the best things that we kind of found through this feasibility study is that actually most farmers are doing some sort of carbon sequestration program through one way or another. And the biggest really need they have is just somebody to guide them through the proper practices and the proper means to formalize this in the market. And that is what Sustainably Sourced is all about. It's about partnering with farmers that are trying to do things the right way, but actually give them clear guidelines to navigate what has traditionally been a very opaque market.
All right, Pablo, we appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.
My pleasure. Thank you.